Captain Haywan stood before the holographic display, showing Earth surrounded by alien construction ships. The Zephyrian Empire was building museums and cultural centers on humanity's birthworld. They planned to turn the sacred ground, where humans first reached for the stars, into an educational exhibit about primitive civilizations. Her crew of 300 warriors had trained their entire lives for this moment. They were children of exile raised on stories of lost homes and burning with inherited anger. Some were pure humans whose families had escaped the Great Disappearance. Others were allies who had learned human ways and sworn human oaths. The bridge of her flagship, New Horizon, hummed with quiet activity. Communications Officer Mina monitored alien government channels. Intelligence Officer Dongwu tracked military movements across 50 star systems. Weapons Specialist Kyung Ho ran final checks on systems that could level cities or disable ships with surgical precision. Jin Ho, her tactical officer, spread star charts across the planning table. His mind worked like a military computer, analyzing every possible outcome of their planned operation. He had studied 5 centuries of galactic conflicts and identified the exact weaknesses in alien defense strategies. The aliens had grown soft during their years of peace. Their wars had become polite affairs with rules and ceremonies. They announced their intentions, gave their enemies time to prepare, and fought battles designed to minimize casualties rather than achieve victory. Their military academies taught honor and tradition instead of survival and success. Haywan remembered her father's stories about real warfare where humans fought to win rather than to make political statements. Human tactics were built on speed, surprise, and overwhelming violence applied at exactly the right moment. Other species never understood that sometimes the most merciful thing was to end a war quickly. Young pilot Sora volunteered for the most dangerous mission. She would fly alone into the heart of enemy space and deliver Haywan's message directly to the Galactic Council. Her modified fighter could outrun anything the aliens had built, but she would be facing thousands of enemy ships with no backup and no hope of rescue if anything went wrong. Sora was 25 years old, born and raised in exile, but carrying human fire in her heart. She had never seen Earth, but she dreamed of walking on the world her grandparents had called home. She flew like humans used to fly, with instinct and courage instead of computer assistance and safety protocols. The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. While the galaxy's attention focused on the Galactic Council meeting on Kepler Prime, human strike teams would hit infrastructure targets across the galaxy. But these would not be attacks designed to destroy. They would be demonstrations designed to terrify. Haywan had learned from centuries of human military history that the best weapon was not the one that killed the most enemies, but the one that made enemies understand they could not win. Fear was more effective than destruction, because fear made opponents surrender before they had to be beaten. Engineer Wu Jin had spent decades infiltrating alien computer networks. Human hackers had been inside enemy systems for generations, learning every secret, studying every weakness, and preparing for this moment. When the signal came, they would prove that alien security was worthless against human determination. The strike teams were small groups of specialists who could move through alien space like ghosts. They carried weapons that looked like common tools and identification that would pass any security check. They had been preparing for years, practicing their missions until they could execute them in their sleep. Medical Officer Ye Jin had developed new combat drugs that enhanced human reflexes and endurance without the dangerous side effects of earlier military stimulants. Human soldiers would be faster, stronger, and more alert than any alien warrior could match in direct combat. But the real surprise was the fleet itself. The galaxy believed the Defiant Thunder and a few other ships represented the total remaining human military power. They had no idea about the shipyards hidden in asteroid fields or the training facilities built inside hollow moons. Admiral Byung-ho commanded the Second Fleet from his flagship Seoul Vengeance 2000, ships that had been constructed in secret using captured alien technology improved by human engineering. They were faster, better armed, and more maneuverable than anything in regular galactic service. Admiral Moon Young led the Third Fleet, another 1,500 vessels crewed by humans who had grown up hearing stories of exile and injustice. They were young, angry, and perfectly trained for the kind of warfare that would shock alien sensibilities. The hidden fleets represented 5 centuries of human preparation. Every ship was a masterwork of engineering designed by people who understood that they might only get one chance to reclaim their birthright. The hulls were stronger, the weapons were deadlier, and the crews were harder than anything the galaxy had seen. Intelligence reports showed that the alien response would be massive and predictable. They would assemble the largest war fleet in galactic history and try to crush human resistance through overwhelming numbers. It was exactly what Haiwan wanted them to do. Human military doctrine had always emphasized using enemy strengths against them. A massive fleet would be slow to maneuver, difficult to coordinate, and vulnerable to the kind of tactics that humans had perfected. During their years of exile, communications specialist Young Ho established encrypted channels with human agents throughout the galaxy. Sleeper cells that had been waiting for decades suddenly received activation codes. Humans who had spent their lives pretending to be loyal alien citizens prepared to reveal their true loyalties. The timing had to be perfect. So-Ra would deliver her message to the Galactic Council at exactly the same moment that demonstrations began across 50 worlds. The aliens would realize that humans were not just back, but that they had been watching and waiting and preparing for centuries. Awan looked out at the stars and thought about her father who had died dreaming of this day. She thought about her grandfather, who had received the evacuation order and chose exile over surrender. She thought about all the humans who had lived and died in the darkness between worlds waiting for this moment. The order went out across the human fleet in the ancient Earth, language that aliens had never bothered to learn. Remember Terra. Remember the exile. Remember why we fight. The children of Earth were coming home and the galaxy would never be the same again. The countdown began in the depths of space while alien leaders congratulated themselves on 5 centuries of peace. They had no idea that human eyes were watching, human hands were moving, and human hearts were beating with the rhythm of justice finally served. The Galactic Council had been meeting for 3 days discussing trade agreements and territory disputes when their security systems detected an incoming vessel. The unknown ship was small, fast, and moving directly toward Kepler Prime without requesting permission to approach. Admiral Thex of the Kepler Defense Force ordered his ships to intercept the intruder. His fleet of 200 vessels moved into formation around the mysterious craft, energy weapons locked onto the target and prepared to fire warning shots. So-Ra smiled inside her fighter cockpit as alien ships surrounded her. She had been practicing this run for years in simulation chambers built from stolen alien data. Her modified human fighter responded to her thoughts as much as her hands moving like a living thing through space. The alien weapons fired, but their targeting computers could not keep up with her movements. She danced between energy beams that should have vaporized her ship. Her fighter twisted and rolled through attack patterns that defied physics, moving faster than alien reflexes. Could track Security Chief Veltar watched in growing alarm as his best pilots failed to even scratch the human vessel. The intruder was not just fast. It was unpredictable, moving in ways that made no tactical sense until suddenly it was behind his ships or above them or below them, in positions that should have been impossible. So-Ra activated her communication systems and her voice crackled across every frequency, in the system cutting through alien military encryption like it was children code. Her words reached every ship, every station, and every government facility, within 50 light years. "I am So-Ra of the Terran Remnant Fleet," she announced as her fighter came to a perfect stop in the center of the alien formation. "I carry a message from Captain Haiwan to the members of the Galactic Council. Humanity has returned, and we are not pleased with what we have found." The council chamber fell silent as delegates realized that a single human pilot had just made their entire defense fleet look like amateurs. The ship that hovered motionless above their meeting hall was clearly human design, but it was unlike anything in their historical records. Ambassador Crix of the Zephyrian Empire stood up with outrage clear in his voice. "Humans are extinct," he declared to the assembled delegates. "You are obviously some kind of genetic experiment or perhaps a clone created by terrorists. We do not negotiate with criminal." So-Ra's laughter echoed through the chamber with a sound like breaking glass. "Extinct," she repeated with amusement in her voice. "You poor sheltered fools. We have been watching you for 500 years. We know everything about your fleets, your weaknesses, your secret alliances, and your hidden fears. At that exact moment, human strike teams activated across the galaxy. On Zephyrian Prime, the capital city's transportation system suddenly displayed messages in perfect Zephyrian script, welcoming humanity back to the galaxy. The messages appeared on every screen in the city for exactly 10 minutes on Crystal Station. The Federation's most secure military-based defense platforms powered down briefly before restarting with new access, codes that only humans knew. The alien commanders realized with growing horror that their most sensitive systems had been compromised for years. The Binary Collective's main communication hub began broadcasting human music across their entire network. Ancient Earth songs about home and freedom and justice, played on frequencies that should have been impossible for outsiders to access. Trade Central, the economic heart of galactic commerce, found all their transaction records temporarily replaced, with detailed analyses of how alien species had divided up human territories after the Great Disappearance. The reports were written in multiple alien languages with perfect grammar and devastating accuracy. Sora continued her broadcast as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. We know which of you collaborated to steal our worlds and which of you tried to protect human colonies. We know which governments celebrated our disappearance and which ones asked uncomfortable questions about where we had gone. Defense Minister Orcs of the Hegemony Alliance demanded to know how one human ship had penetrated their most advanced security grid. Sora answered by transmitting detailed schematics of every defensive installation in the Kepler system, including several secret facilities that supposedly did not exist. We could have destroyed everything if we had wanted to, she explained calmly. Instead, we chose to prove our capabilities without killing anyone. We are not the monsters you remember from your history books. We are something far more dangerous. We are humans who have learned patience. The massive human dreadnought New Sol decloaked directly above the council building. Its hull was kilometers long, bristling with weapons that looked both familiar and terrifyingly advanced. The ship was larger than anything currently in galactic service, and its design suggested capabilities that made alien admirals nervous. Other human ships appeared throughout the system, materializing from stealth fields that had hidden them for hours, not attacking, simply making their presence known. The alien defense fleet found itself outnumbered by vessels they had never seen. Coming. Fleet. Admiral Kyung-Soo opened communication channels from his flagship. The aliens recognized his voice from historical records. He had been one of the most feared human military commanders before the Great Disappearance. Now he was back, and he sounded even more dangerous than before. Honored delegates, he said with cold politeness. We have spent 5 centuries watching your civilization develop. We have studied your military doctrines, analyzed your political systems, and identified your critical vulnerabilities. We know exactly how to defeat every one of you. The holographic displays in the council chamber lit up with tactical analyses of every major alien fleet. Detailed breakdowns of strengths, weaknesses, and recommended attack strategies appeared faster than the delegates could read them. The humans had been preparing for this moment for generations. Sora delivered her final message with the quiet confidence of someone who held all the advantages. You have exactly 24 hours to evacuate all personnel from Earth. Humanity is coming home, and we are not in a mood to share. The galaxy belongs to all of us, not just the strongest. The young pilot continued speaking as her fighter began moving toward the edge of the system. We tried exile for 5 centuries. It did not work. We tried patience and watching and waiting. That also did not work. Now we will try something that has always worked for humans. We will try winning. Her ship accelerated away from Kepler Prime, moving faster than any alien vessel could follow. The human fleet faded back into stealth mode, leaving the aliens alone with their fear and their rapidly changing understanding of galactic politics. The emergency session that followed would reshape civilization forever, but first the aliens had to decide whether they would accept human demands or try to fight a species that had just proven they were better at warfare than anyone had remembered. The countdown had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Within 6 hours of Sora's ultimatum, the largest military fleet in galactic history began assembling at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire commanded over 3,000 ships representing every major species in known space. They had put aside centuries of political differences to face what they saw as a threat to civilized society. The alien fleet was magnificent to behold. Elegant Zephyrian cruisers floated alongside massive hegemony battleships while Crystal Federation destroyers moved in perfect formation with binary collective drone carriers. Each species had contributed their finest vessels, and most experienced cruise admiral Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship Galactic Unity, looking at tactical displays that showed human positions throughout the Sol system. The aliens had overwhelming numerical superiority, advanced technology, and 5 centuries of military development since humans had disappeared from the galaxy intelligence. Reports suggested that humans had perhaps 1,000 ships at most, hiding among the asteroids and moons of their home system. Even if human technology had improved during their exile, they could not possibly match the firepower of 3,000 alien warships working together. Captain Haywan received word of the alien fleet while standing in the observation deck of her command ship New Horizon. She looked out at Earth, floating blue and beautiful in the distance, exactly as her grandfather had described it in stories. She smiled with the expression of someone who had been waiting her entire life for this moment. Her tactical officer Jin Ho spread holographic battle plans across the command table. The human fleet numbered 800. Ships, each one a masterpiece of engineering that combined stolen alien technology with human innovation and centuries of careful improvement. The ships looked different from anything the galaxy had seen. Human designers had focused on speed maneuverability and hitting power rather than the elegant curves and impressive size that aliens preferred. Human vessels were built for killing, not for looking magnificent in parade formations. Lieutenant Commander Dong Hyun led the first squadron of human fighters. His 12 ships launched from hidden bases throughout the solar system, moving toward the alien fleet in attack patterns that seemed to ignore basic physics. Their pilots flew with an instinctive understanding of three-dimensional combat that alien training could never match. The human fighters dove straight into the heart of the alien formation without hesitation or fear. They moved like schools of fish or flocks of birds, each pilot anticipating what the others would do before orders were given. Their ships responded to thought and instinct rather than computer calculations. Alien fighters tried to intercept them, but found their targeting systems could not lock onto the human craft. The human pilots flew, as if they could predict, where enemy weapons would fire before the aliens had even chosen their targets. They danced through laser fire and missile explosions with impossible grace. The first alien ships to die were surprised by how quickly it happened. Human weapons punched through shields and armor that should have been impenetrable. Energy beams designed to disable instead of destroy left alien vessels drifting helpless in space with their crews alive. But their ships useless. Admiral Veltar watched in growing alarm as his perfectly organized formation began to fall apart. Human attack patterns made no sense according to standard military doctrine, but they were devastatingly effective. His ships were being taken apart by an enemy that refused to fight fair. Commander Sujin led the Human Electronic Warfare Division from her ship Digital Storm. Her team had spent decades studying alien computer networks and communication systems. They knew every weakness, every backdoor, and every security flaw in alien technology. Sujin activated virus programs that had been 20 years in development. The alien fleet depended on networked communication to coordinate their massive formation, but human malware turned that strength into a fatal weakness. Suddenly, alien commanders were receiving accurate damage reports instead of the optimistic summaries their systems usually provided. For the first time in centuries, alien military leaders saw honest assessments of their combat effectiveness. The casualty reports were devastating. Morale collapsed as crews realized they were not winning. They were being slaughtered by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The aliens had forgotten what real war felt like. They had grown accustomed to conflicts where both sides agreed on acceptable casualty levels and battles ended when predetermined objectives were achieved. Human warfare recognized no such limitations. Humans fought to win completely and permanently. Young Captain Minju commanded a squadron of human stealth ships that materialized behind alien battle lines. Her crews had trained for years in the art of invisible warfare, appearing from nowhere to strike critical targets before vanishing back into the void. The alien fleet tried to retreat into defensive formations, but human ships were already inside their perimeter. Human commanders had studied alien tactics for centuries and knew exactly how they would respond to every threat. The battle was being fought according to human plans, with aliens reacting predictably to human moves. Weapons Officer Sung-ho demonstrated the difference between alien and human engineering philosophy. His ship carried missiles that could think for themselves, seeking out the most vulnerable points on enemy vessels and adapting their attack patterns in real time. The aliens began to realize that their technological advantage was meaningless against an enemy that understood their weaknesses better than they did. Human weapons were designed to exploit specific flaws in alien defensive systems. Human tactics were built around detailed knowledge of alien psychology, and training Admiral Veltar tried to rally his fleet with appeals to galactic civilization and the greater good. But his communications were intercepted and jammed by human electronic warfare specialists. His orders never reached most of his ships, leaving individual commanders to make desperate decisions without coordination. The human fleet moved through alien formations like a sword through silk, cutting apart carefully planned defensive strategies with surgical precision. Every human ship knew exactly what every other human ship was doing, creating a level of coordination that alien observers found impossible to understand. Captain HFY opened communication channels to address the alien fleet directly. Her voice carried the authority of someone whose people had been preparing for this battle for 500 years. "You came here to destroy us," she said calmly. "But you do not understand what you are fighting." The aliens had expected to face desperate refugees or primitive savages. Instead, they found themselves fighting the most advanced military force in galactic history, commanded by people who had spent centuries studying their enemies and perfecting the art of war. As the battle continued, it became clear that numbers meant nothing against human tactical superiority. The alien fleet was not being defeated. It was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that had turned warfare into a precise science. The alien fleet began to fracture as individual species started questioning whether this war was worth losing their finest ships and crews. The Crystalline Federation pulled back first, followed by smaller allied nations who realized they were fighting an enemy that had been preparing for this battle since before they were born. Admiral Veltar watched his grand alliance falling apart, as species after species decided that protecting Zephyrian interests was not worth facing human military superiority. His communications with fleet commanders became increasingly desperate as he tried to hold together a coalition that was dissolving under enemy fire. The humans were not fighting like the savage barbarians that alien propaganda had described. They disabled ships rather than destroying them. They targeted military systems while avoiding crew areas. They fought with precision and restraint that suggested advanced military discipline. Captain HFY had given strict orders about civilian casualties. Human weapons were programmed to avoid populated areas and refugee ships. Her people had learned hard lessons during their exile about the difference between justice and revenge, but Admiral Veltar made a decision that changed everything. If conventional tactics would not work against human military superiority, he would force them to surrender by threatening innocent lives. He ordered his remaining ships to target human civilian vessels and refugee transports. The order went out across the Zephyrian communication network. Target all human ships, including non-combatants. If we cannot defeat their military, we will destroy their families until they surrender. Shoot to kill, no prisoners. No mercy. That was the moment that sealed the fate of every alien ship in the system. Captain HFY's voice cut across all communication frequencies, carrying a coldness that made experienced warriors shiver. You have chosen to target non-combatants. This war is now personal. All restraints are removed. The transformation in the human fleet was immediate and terrifying. Ships that had been fighting with careful precision suddenly became engines of absolute destruction. Human pilots who had been disabling alien vessels began targeting bridge sections and engine cores with surgical accuracy. The aliens discovered the difference between humans fighting to win and humans fighting for survival. When human families were threatened, every human warrior became something that alien military academies had never prepared their students to face. Major Jae Sung, led a boarding action that became legendary in human military history. His team of 50 Marines captured the Zephyrian super dreadnought Imperial Crown with 8,000 crew members without killing a single alien. They moved through the massive ship like deadly shadows. The human Marines used non-lethal weapons and advanced tactics to neutralize resistance so efficiently that most of the alien crew did not realize they had been boarded until human voices came over their communication systems. The boarding action took 12 minutes from start to finish. Admiral Veltar found himself prisoner on his own ship, surrounded by human soldiers who treated him with professional courtesy while systematically taking control of every system on his vessel. He realized with growing horror that these were not savage warriors, but highly trained specialists. The real shock came when human reinforcements began arriving. Admiral Byung-ho's Second Fleet translated into the system with over 2,000 vessels, followed by Admiral Moon Young's Third Fleet with 1,500 more. The galaxy had underestimated human military capabilities by an enormous margin. The alien fleet that had seemed so overwhelming an hour earlier was now outnumbered 3-1 by vessels that were individually superior to anything in galactic service. The humans had not just survived their exile, they had used it to become the most formidable military force in known space. Young Captain Sora led a fighter squadron that demonstrated human pilot training at its finest. Her ships moved through alien formations like deadly dancers, each pilot flying with skills that bordered on supernatural ability. They destroyed targets faster than alien sensors could track. Engineer Wu Jin activated sleeper programs, hidden in alien ship computers for decades. Systems that aliens trusted with their lives suddenly began working for human commanders instead. Enemy weapons powered down navigation systems, reported false positions, and life support began limiting oxygen to non-essential areas. The psychological effect was devastating. Alien crews realized that their own ships were betraying them. Human hackers had been inside their most secure systems for years, waiting for this moment. Every alien vessel was compromised. Every network was infiltrated. Admiral Moon Young demonstrated the human approach to space warfare by surrounding an entire alien battle group and offering them terms of surrender that guaranteed safe treatment for prisoners. Her ships could have destroyed the enemy formation in minutes, but she chose mercy instead. The contrast with alien tactics was stark. Where Admiral Veltar had chosen to target civilians, Admiral Moon Young protected enemy non-combatants even while dismantling their military forces. The moral authority was clearly on the human side. Communications Officer Jung-ho intercepted alien government transmissions showing panic spreading across the galaxy. Political leaders were demanding explanations from military commanders who had promised easy victory over primitive human survivors. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions as member species realized that their combined military might was helpless against human tactical superiority. Some delegates began suggesting immediate peace negotiations, while others called for even more extreme measures. Medical Officer Ye Jin worked frantically to treat alien wounded in human military hospitals. Human medical technology had advanced significantly during the exile, and human doctors were saving alien lives that their own medical systems could not help. The irony was not lost on anyone. Humans were providing better medical care to their enemies than those enemies provided to their own people. It was another demonstration of how human civilization had evolved during their centuries of exile. Admiral Veltar sent a desperate transmission to the Galactic Council as his flagship was towed away by human vessels. "They are not just back," he reported with defeat clear in his voice. "They are better than they ever were. We cannot fight them. We can barely understand them." Captain Haywan stood on the bridge of her command ship watching alien vessels surrender throughout the solar system. Her people had achieved complete military victory, but she knew the real work was just beginning. Winning the war was easier than building the peace that would follow. The tide had turned completely. The galaxy would never again underestimate human capability or question human resolve. But now came the greater challenge of creating a civilization where all species could thrive without fear of each other. The children of Earth had proven their strength, now they had to prove their wisdom. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was interrupted when Captain Haywan's shuttle landed directly in the center of their meeting chamber without requesting permission or following any diplomatic protocols. Her ship passed through their security shields as if they did not exist. She walked into the heart of Galactic government wearing simple human military dress uniform, flanked by 2 Marines who looked like they could fight entire alien armies. Her presence filled the massive chamber with quiet authority that made even the most powerful delegates feel small. "Honored delegates," she said with a voice that carried the weight of 5 centuries of exile and the strength of complete military victory. "We need to talk. The galaxy has spent 500 years learning to live without humans. Now it must learn to live with us again." The next 8 hours changed galactic civilization forever. HFY did not come as a conqueror seeking tribute or revenge. She came as the representative of a people who had learned hard lessons during their years in the darkness between stars. Elder diplomat Wu Jin stepped forward carrying sealed records that had been hidden in the deepest vaults of galactic government for centuries. The truth about humanity's original disappearance shocked even the oldest members of the Council, who thought they knew galactic history. The documents told the story of the Shadow Swarm, an extra-galactic force of consuming darkness that devoured entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but empty void. The entity had been detected approaching the galaxy 500 years earlier, moving slowly but inevitably toward inhabited space. Humanity's exodus had not been voluntary or mysterious. It had been a strategic withdrawal to the outer rim where they could build defenses against a threat that was still coming. The Great Disappearance had been humanity sacrificing their homes to save the galaxy from something worse than war. The aliens had celebrated human absence, not knowing that human scientists and engineers were spending centuries developing weapons and strategies to fight an enemy that conventional warfare could not defeat. The Shadow Swarm consumed energy matter and even space itself. Captain HFY activated holographic displays showing the approaching threat. The entity had paused at the edge of the galaxy, apparently studying galactic defenses, but recent observations suggested it was preparing to resume its advance. The invasion would begin within 50 years. Young Ambassador Ye Jin, representing the generation of humans who had grown up in exile, spoke with passion about the future she envisioned. A galaxy where species worked together not out of fear, but out of mutual respect and shared purpose. The proposal that emerged from 8 hours of intense negotiation would reshape civilization forever. Humanity would share their advanced defensive technology and military expertise to help prepare the galaxy against the Shadow Swarm. In return, they would receive equal representation in galactic government. The Galactic Restoration Act established humanity as the galaxy's military protectors, while creating new oversight councils to ensure that no species could ever again be forced from their homes by political pressure or economic manipulation. Trade agreements were restructured to eliminate the exploitative practices that had developed during humanity's absence. Colonies that had been built on former human worlds would be administered jointly rather than seized by whoever had the strongest fleet. Admiral Byung-ho presented the defensive plans that human strategists had developed during their exile. The Shadow Swarm could only be defeated through perfect cooperation between all galactic species. Each civilization would contribute their unique strengths to a combined defense force. The Zephyrian Empire would provide their expertise in energy manipulation. The Crystal Federation would contribute their advanced computer systems. The Binary Collective would share their drone technology and manufacturing capabilities. Every species had something valuable to offer. Former Admiral Veltar, who had been treated with surprising courtesy during his captivity, stood to address the council. He had spent days talking with human military officers and learning about their true capabilities and intentions. "These are not the savage humans of our historical records," he told the assembled delegates. "They have used their exile to become something greater than any of us. They could have conquered the galaxy, but instead they chose to protect it." The vote on the Restoration Act was unanimous, partly because the alternatives were clearly worse. The galaxy could accept human leadership in military matters, or it could try to face the Shadow Swarm alone with weapons and tactics that were already proven inadequate. Captain HFY stood before the assembled delegates as the new Galactic Defense Coordinator. Her first orders established joint training programs where human tactics would be taught to alien military personnel, while human engineers learned to work with alien technology communications. Officer Minna began coordinating the massive logistical effort required to fortify the entire galaxy. Every inhabited system would receive new defensive installations designed using human military science, improved by alien engineering capabilities. Young pilot Sora accepted command of the new Galactic Fighter Corps, where the morning started like any other morning on New Sol Colony, but by evening everything had changed forever. The human cities were empty, the farms were abandoned, the spaceports sat silent with ships still docked at their terminals. It was as if 40 million humans had simply walked away from their lives in the middle of ordinary Tuesday activities. Commander Taimin received the message while his ship was exploring the far edge of known space. His communication officer Jinsu called out from his station with confusion in his voice. The message was short and coded in Old Earth military language. Project Haven begins now. Return impossible. Survive. That was all. No explanation, no coordinates, no follow-up transmission. The defiant thunder carried 50 of the finest human soldiers and crew members in the galaxy. They were tough, experienced fighters who had seen action in dozens of conflicts across human space. But when they tried to contact home base, they found only silence. When they tried to reach other human ships, they heard nothing but empty static. When they jumped back to human territory, they found ghost worlds. Taimin walked through the empty streets of Busan Station on the planet Kepler 7. The coffee shops still had warm cups sitting on tables. The schools had children drawings hanging on walls. The hospitals had patients' beds made up and waiting for people who would never return. It was like finding a photograph of life frozen in time. His crew searched every human world they could reach. The pattern was always the same. No bodies, no signs of fighting, no damage to buildings or infrastructure. Just emptiness, where millions of humans had been living their lives hours before. Young pilot Hye-jin found personal belongings scattered in homes as if families had left in the middle of dinner preparation. The alien species celebrated when news of human disappearance spread across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire issued official statements about how much safer space would be now. The Crystalline Federation started claiming former human mining operations. The Binary Collective began sending colony ships toward human agricultural worlds within weeks. Humans had been the most feared species in known space for good reasons. They adapted to any environment faster than other races could study it. They turned peaceful tools into weapons with frightening creativity. Their children learned military tactics as easily as other species' children learned to read. They fought wars to win them, not to make political points. Other species needed special equipment to survive on different worlds. Humans just needed time. They could eat almost anything, find water anywhere, and build shelters from local materials. A human family could establish a working farm on a hostile planet faster than most alien research teams could complete their initial surveys. The Galactic military academies taught courses on human warfare tactics. Human battle plans were studied as examples of terrifying efficiency. Where other species would spend months planning careful campaigns, humans would strike fast and hard and devastate their enemies before anyone understood what was happening. Commander Taimin had fought in the sector wars where human forces defeated alien armies 10 times their size through superior tactics and absolute determination. He remembered battles where human soldiers had held impossible positions through pure stubborn refusal to surrender. He knew why the galaxy feared his people, but now his people were gone and he was left with 49 other humans hiding in the darkness between stars. His ship became home to the last free humans in the galaxy. They watched from the shadows as alien species divided up human territories like scavengers picking over bones. Years passed and the galaxy began to forget what humans had really been like. Stories became legends. Legends became myths. The aliens who had lived in fear of human expansion started telling their children bedtime stories about the terrible humans who used to rule the stars. The Zephyrian Empire rose to become the dominant galactic power. They were elegant, cultured people who believed in proper behavior and civilized warfare. They looked down on human tactics as crude and brutal. They convinced themselves that humans had been nothing but violent barbarians. Taimin trained his crew and their children in human military traditions. They practiced combat, techniques in the empty cargo bays of their ship. They studied alien technology and learned how to improve it with human engineering. They became ghosts, haunting the galaxy, waiting for their chance. His daughter, Heywan, grew up hearing stories of Earth and the human colonies. She learned to pilot fighters in asteroid fields. She mastered weapon systems that could punch through alien armor. She became the perfect human warrior shaped by exile and burning with desire for justice. The crew of the Defiant Thunder recruited other survivors. They found humans who had been off-world during the Great Disappearance. They rescued human slaves from alien markets. They gathered refugees and outcasts until their small fleet had grown to several ships. They called themselves the Watchers because they watched everything. The galaxy thought humans were extinct, but human eyes were everywhere. Human agents infiltrated alien governments. Human hackers penetrated secure computer networks. Human spies gathered intelligence on every major species. Timin lived to see his grandchildren born in exile. He taught them about Earth, about the smell of rain on summer afternoons, about the sound of ocean waves against rocky shores. He made them promise to remember what they had lost and to never stop working to reclaim it. The aliens built monuments to galactic peace in former human cities. They turned human military academies into museums. They wrote history books that painted humans as a dangerous mistake that evolution had corrected. They had no idea that somewhere in the dark human hearts were still beating with the rhythm of war. Young officer Sujin discovered alien communications discussing plans to colonize Earth itself. The sacred homeworld of humanity would become a tourist attraction for alien visitors who wanted to see where the violent humans had come from. It would be the ultimate insult to human memory. That news reached Heywan, who had inherited command after her father's death. She was 40 years old, hardened by decades of preparation and burning with inherited rage. The aliens had taken everything from humanity. Now they wanted to desecrate the one place that could never be replaced. The time for watching was ending. The time for action was about to begin. The galaxy had grown comfortable in its belief that humans were gone forever. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The children of Earth were coming home, and they were not in a forgiving mood.